Welcome everyone, and I'm delighted to see so many familiar faces. And I'll start with a little bit about the UK India Women's Leadership Network, and I think Asma is the right candidate for for this network and to talk to us. So the UK India Women's Leadership Network was launched by Minister Greg Hands in November 2016 when Mr. Theresa May came to India. And this network is the only one of its kind, and it attempts to bring together women from British and Indian businesses for networking, mentoring, information, discussions, with the underlying mission to create workplaces in the future devoid of glass ceilings. And we also celebrate women of substance. We firmly believe that future generations must not be about shattering glass ceilings, but about growing naturally with enough headroom for women. While we intend to use this network to help women progress professionally or pursue entrepreneurial career, this network also wants to bring men into the conversation. This initiative derives from the CBI headquarter emphasis on diversity, and we help contribute to the people to people dialogue between UK and India, or as the Living Bridge, as it's now called. And today we have a brilliant example of the Living Bridge. Asma is no stranger to most of us. Today, she will take us on a journey from Kolkata to Cambridge, from a supper club to a full fledged restaurant, and nothing less but a stopover at the chef's table on Netflix. So, ladies and gentlemen, the UK India Women's Leadership Network is proud to present celebrity India born British chef Asma, a food on entrepreneur with a PhD in British constitutional law from King's College London. Cooking, cooking was her passion, and today we will see how she has made her dream, her passion, into reality. And what began as a supper club from her home in Kensington, 3 years later opened up as a pop up in Soho, and Darjeeling Express, the restaurant, opened its doors in June 2017. She's been voted the Female Entrepreneur of the Year at the Asian Restaurant Awards and Entrepreneur of the Year in the Asian Women of the Year Awards. Her debut cookbook, Asma's Indian Kitchen, was published by Pavilion on 4th of October 2018. And she is the only British chef to feature in the Netflix Emmy nominated Chef's Table. So, without further ado, I am going to ask Asma to speak to us. So, here you go, Asma.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be asked to speak to your group. And yes, I think living bridges are very important. I think bridges are very important at this time because we seem to be getting polarized. The media reflects and actually it amplifies divisions, which is often fanned by politicians of every kind. And this whole idea of us and them is very, very dangerous. And when people ask me, what passport do you hold? Do you feel Indian? Do you feel British? And I always say, I am everything. I am from the East and I'm from the West. And I have my roots, which actually, I never say India. My roots go to Calcutta, where I grew up. And Calcutta is a very, very significant city for me. And if I walked on the streets of London, where I have lived longer than I did in India, I mean, I moved to this country when I was 21, and I have, been here for 3 decades. I am now 51. And but if anyone tapped me at the back and asked me, "Tumhara ghar kahan hai? Where is your mitti?" I would say Calcutta. So the thing is that it is very, very important not to forget who you are. I think the reason why I have succeeded is I haven't tried to be something I'm not. And and it was interesting because when I got approached by Netflix, which was out of the blue completely, and I was very conscious of the fact, which had been, British people were all cribbing, look at this, full of French and Italian chefs, and they've never taken any British chef. When I saw this message saying, we want to actually feature you as the first British chef, I didn't feel I didn't belong. I felt this was right. Because I think it's really important. No one will trust you. No one will believe in you. No one will actually take you seriously unless you believe in yourself. This is a very important lesson because my first reaction was, this is great, it's going to be very exciting. The only thing I ask them is that do not script me. I do not want to be told what to say because this is a problem with being a woman of color in a majority white population. And I would also say this is the same being a minority in India as a Muslim, that people have a perception of who you are and what you are, often based on deep prejudice and bias. And of course, misreporting by media, by what they see in television, terrible stuff that often read in WhatsApp group. So hatred is very easy to spread. It is very hard to spread love. And that's the one thing I did. I began the food business, as you said in your introduction, despite being a lawyer and after having done my PhD. It's not that I changed my mind. I knew halfway through my PhD that I wanted to cook because I realized when I was going in and out of court and I was writing, edits for House of Lords documents on what my specialty was. I thought, okay, fine, I can write the laws of this country because that's what I've specialized in. But nothing gave me as much pleasure, not to cook, to see someone eat the food I cooked. Because I had taken them home. And I remember that feeling. I came to this country feeling completely desolate, isolated, abandoned. It's hard to explain what it was to leave home 30 years ago. People can't understand that now with technology,
Yeah.
Now, if you miss your family, you can have a Skype conversation with your dog in Delhi. But at the time that I was in this country, it was very expensive to travel home, extremely expensive to call home. And I had a clock in front of me, which is that you had to stop speaking at 45 seconds. Because if you went 1 second over, you were charged for a minute of that call, very expensive call. I waited for letters from Abba. My mother was extremely lazy. She still is. She never writes to me at all. In some way, my father used to send me aerogram, the ones that you fold, the blue colored ones that you get. And Abba used to write to me, draw pictures. And Amma used to just write, I miss you, beta, lots of love, beta. That's it. That was Amma's contribution. But I always kept an unopened letter from my father for the days when I missed him. I missed Ammu. And it wasn't the day to call. And then every hour dragged on where I pined. I was completely hollow. And that visual I remember in Cambridge. I moved to this country when I was in January. I mean, anyone who's been to England in January will know it is possibly the worst time in the world. And my first thing was, my God, they got it wrong in the Quran. It is not fire. It is Cambridge in winter, which is hell. Because the river was frozen. It was so cold. And I discovered later on when I went to see my first person, they had heating in the house. I realized we didn't have heating. My husband was in this old Cambridge college. He was, a teacher. He was admissions tutor, graduate tutor, a college don. He had this old house which had a fireplace, which I thought was very cool. But then there was no heating. I went to someone's house and saw a box where heat was coming out. I said, what is this? And my husband kept saying, shush, 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 Asma. I was like, okay, I'll talk about this when we go home. I said, they have a box which has heat in it. Why don't we have one? He said, oh, we don't have heating in this house. It was an old college cottage, which, nightmare. Extremely cold. And I used to always think, I used to see the birds flying and I used to think, they have wings and they're going home or they're going somewhere away from this land. And I want to leave. And, 30 years ago, you didn't, especially in Calcutta, we had a communist government and, a lot of films were banned. We had Doordarshan. So, you didn't see a lot of stuff of the West, so it's very hard to, it's like another era. It's hard to put yourself in that position. I had never seen trees in real life without leaves. And I remember the first time I went out on my own and I saw this row of trees without leaves. I felt this was me, stripped of everything that was beautiful, that was gracious and soft and beautiful. That roughness of the bark, I remember touching the bark and feeling the roughness on my hands and thinking, this is me. This tree will never have a spring, and nor will I. I had an arranged marriage with this, man who I was trying to understand, and I didn't want to tell him too much, that how much how much I missed my parents, or how much I missed food. He was a terrible cook, and I got married in a huge excitement. I had a typical arranged marriage. I got met Mushtaq, and then within 2 months I was married and on the flight to Cambridge. So all I did was make gararas in Aligarh. That's all I did. I went to Hyderabad, I made my jewelry. I went to Aligarh, I made my garara, and then I got married. I didn't know how to cook, and I thought, and he, mother, my husband, that I don't believe in gender roles. I'm going to cook for her every day. I thought, great, I'm going to have dawat from my husband and have a great life. But that wasn't the case. So I started from there. I started from a very low position. And today, when I go out in the streets of London, I am recognized by most people. And being the first, chef representing Britain, I am in a comfort zone, but I didn't get here by a smooth journey. I hit a lot of hurdles. The prejudice here is very deep against immigrants. And I tell people this, I will not let you take my food if you don't take me. You cannot be abusive. You cannot hate me because of the color of my skin, my accent, my Muslim name, but want to eat biryani. You have no right. You have no right to take my food if you do not understand my culture. The problem is when food and culture are separated, which has happened in this country. Immigrant food is very popular. Chicken tikka masala, everybody loves it. Everybody talks about Indian food as if it's their own food. But then the moment they see us, there is name calling. There is the othering of us. And I say, no, you cannot hear my music. You cannot listen to anything that is of my culture. You cannot wear my clothes. I am very happy to share. First, you show me some respect and honor. And that is what started my entrepreneur's journey, because I saw food as a way of communication, as a bridge between people. I was going to connect to people using food, but this was also about power. I realized very soon I had to become powerful. I had to be on stage, not because of my own arrogance. I knew I had to get on stage. I had to become something because from that stage, I could be the voice of the voiceless. I could be the voice of the women who had been marginalized in the society, in my society. I speak for women from the graves of Bulandshahr, where generations of my women have been buried. I speak for women over here, buried in the cemeteries in London, who were never given that opportunity to be seen as something, especially home cooks. Women like me who had arranged marriages came to Videsh, Kalapani, and made a life. And they lived vicariously through the success of their husbands and daughters, mostly sons, and lived their life like this. Great cooks, those who made makkei ki soka saag every time winter came, who pined for home, but stayed here. They existed, they didn't live. And I just think that time has come for us as immigrant women to be seen as powerful. You must acknowledge my presence in the room when I walk in. I stand not just for myself, I represent every Asian woman, and I mean South Asian, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. All of us, the entire edifice of London, when you go into the city of London, was built on the blood of my ancestors. Colonialism is how power was built in this country. And it's not taught in the schools. It is not taught anywhere. And I just think that, through food, I talk about power. I talk about exploitation. I talk about slavery. And, I serve the fish malai curry, prawn malai curry, which is from Bengal. Those who are Bengalis over here will know what I'm talking about. And it is not malai as in Hindi, which is malai, which is, cream. It's malaya curry. Actually, because it has coconut milk, it's the only Bengali fish dish where you add coconut cream or milk to it. It came from the indentured Bengali laborers in the Malay Peninsula who were sent by the British to build railways. Don't ever forget that in our food, in the names and the stories, there is all of that as well, injustice. You need to know that often, Shahi Tukra was made by, supposedly by the poor cooks who were getting no money, because in the middle everyone was eating it. They made this for the king, out of stale bread. That, this is what we eat as a call. Food can be a very powerful form of communication. And for me, I've succeeded, and I had to practice saying I'm successful, because I need to say it so that women who look at me, God, she's just like me. I'm also 50. I'm, middle-aged, overweight, Indian, whatever. And I can do it too. And I have to say it. I go to forums to say, I am very successful. I am I am someone who you cannot ignore. And just a month, in fact, this is the September Vogue issue, they named 25 people, significant people in the UK, making a difference. It included the Queen, but included me. I was the only chef over there on that list. And this is why it is so important. Never be afraid or ashamed. Do not allow other people to tell you who you are. Do not let them put you in boxes. Do not let them put labels on you. You can be anything you want to be. I decided when I was, able to cook, I was going to cook because when I cooked, I felt the presence of Ammu next to me, in the aroma of the masalas. And when the biryani was open, I felt Amma was standing next to me. And I thought my power comes from memories. My power comes from food. I will empower other women and I will change their lives. Then I can celebrate my victory. I can celebrate being free. I can celebrate being victorious if I free others. Otherwise, it's nothing. So I think it's so important that, do not see your entrepreneur's journey as a journey about yourself. Imagine that you're carrying on your shoulders all the dreams of others who look like you. And when you hit, and you will always hit, hurdles, stand up, because there are people coming behind you. You need to move that hurdle for them. Clear the path for others. I want to, in my lifetime, see someone more successful than me, who looks like me, who's South Asian, in England, who will surpass me. And I want to live to applaud that day, that someone will do better than me.
I think the time is now for women of color all over the world to be taken into account, and hopefully if America shows the way, and UK is already showing, so it's fantastic to have you here. Very inspiring to hear about your journey. And I'm calling Saloni Madan now, General Manager of BBG Group. She's going to field some questions for you.
Yeah, thank you, Shaila.
Saloni.
Yeah, thank you, Shaila. Thank you, Azma. The first question I have is, what is from Saloni Roy, Senior Director from Deloitte, India. What is the story behind the name Darjeeling Express?
Darjeeling Express is the toy train that goes from New Jalpaiguri to Darjeeling. The little meter train, poof, 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 the steam train. And I had never imagined that I would call a restaurant that. I called my supper club business that. Because it reminded me of liberty, of freedom from the heat of Calcutta. But also, it was the beginning of summer holidays. I was allowed to wear jeans for the first time. I come from a conservative Muslim family and I wore shalwar kameezes. But on that train, Abba used to always say, "Beta, you can wear jeans, you can do whatever you want. Yahan koi nahi tumko janta hai." So it was very exciting for me, that sense of liberty. And that's why I named it Darjeeling Express, because for me, this was breaking the rules. But the fact that I had a liberal husband who told me, please study law, please become a barrister, I didn't want to do that, I wanted to cook. So it was a liberation of a different sort, where I wanted to go back to my roots and then become something from there.
Yeah, very interesting.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. Lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. So the second question is, what message would you have for women entrepreneurs?
I think the most important thing is that only person who can defeat you is yourself. It is actually fear and what others will say about what you're doing that holds us all back. Remember, this is your life and you don't have a chance. You will never get a second innings. This is it. You have one time to get on stage, one time to make a difference, one time to leave a legacy. So really important to understand that do not be afraid, because it is fear, absolutely unmitigated fear and what fear of society and, breaking norms. And, before people die, they never say they regret, what someone had said about their lives. They regret all the missed opportunities. So don't wait for that time when it becomes too late. And as you know, the proverbial, you miss the train. Don't do that. Get onto it now. Be unafraid. Fall off and get back on. That I've done that. I haven't got here. I am scarred from all the defeats and all the rejections I've had, all the doors that have been closed on me. But today, who will close the door at me? No one. And that is only because I was absolutely believe. And I'm not, this is not about being arrogant. The worst kind of person is the arrogant person. This was my self-belief, also driven by my own faith. I was raised, from a tradition where I believed that if I didn't harm anyone, I will have the right to succeed. Do not damage anyone. Do not, speak badly about other people. And, just focus on your own life. So for me, this is my message to everybody.
Thank you. What a strong message. Yes, of course, we need that. The next question is, which are your favorite restaurants in India?
My favorite restaurants in India, I will have to say, unfortunately, mostly all in Calcutta, and I know that not everyone is from there, but I absolutely love, all the old biryani, chicken chop, Rizala places in Calcutta, Aminia, Arsalan. So really love that. But in Delhi, I love going to Bijoli Grill, and having prawn curry. So it's all very Calcutta oriented. So I love that. But very interesting meal I had, which is Roop, by Sujan Sarkar, which is near Qutub Minar in Delhi. Very, so food that, completely I can't relate to because it was all very fusion and very, complicated fusion food. But it was very impressive because he managed to keep the essence of Indian spices. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in Delhi as well. So yeah, I mean, India is now going through a very interesting phase. I think the pandemic has been devastating, but I hope that everyone will recover.
Yeah. Fantastic. In fact, I just wanted to jump in and say that I'm also semi-Calcuttan, stayed there for more than 25 years, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. So my next question is, of course, around the pandemic. So during the COVID pandemic, food businesses have been hit badly. How did you cope with it?
Well, I had to close because the thing is that my entire team are all women, South Asian and older, and South Asians, it disproportionately impacted Indians, as you all probably know, in this country. Yeah. There were a higher percentage of things. Now, we don't know why that was the case, but while they're trying to figure this out, I wasn't going to risk it. So I did close. I didn't do delivery because for delivery, they have to come in. But what I did use the time was to actually go out and fight with landlords. Because at this time, a lot of the restaurants closed, which is very unfortunate. But I went in there, and the most interesting, huge flagship restaurant of Covent Garden, which is a grade 2 listed building, enormous restaurant. I went there and I managed to convince the landlord to give it to me because it's a very white only, very French, Italian dominated. Covent Garden is very rarefied European cuisine. I have a right to be on that table. I have a right to bring a cuisine with deep heritage. It is racism that a lot of people think ethnic food is cheap and cheerful. And this is why you wouldn't fit in this very, very Michelin star refined area, the quad around Covent Garden. Of course I fit in. I fit in because our food has such an amazing story, such richness in it. And this is what I did. I used the pandemic to fight a lot, to go into politics and argue with people. And I got this beautiful space, which I'm going to move into, inshallah, and open in end of October. So yeah, I've used the pandemic for that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's great to know. So the next question is, what are the low points in your journey and how did you overcome those?
The low point really has been, bias, where I remember when I was at home, it was very successful doing the supper clubs. But when we went to the pub, a lot of people look like aging rock stars, heavily pierced with Harley Davidson, lots of tattoos. And I tried to get them to have Indian food. And I remember all of them saying, we don't want to eat your food. And one guy in particular told me, don't want your curry, love. And I thought, I will not cry. I will not get devastated. And someday someone will want to eat my food. I really struggled in the beginning time in Soho, in this pub, because the idea of an Indian, woman with 5 other women trying to cook what they saw as curry was really odd and very hard to deal with the prejudice. But then I had a twist and turn, and my kismat, I suppose, and prayers of my parents. I became successful, and that no curry love queued for 2 hours to get a table in my restaurant. I didn't bill him, and I said, I hope you know why I didn't bill you. And he said, yes, and thank you for forgiving me. I forgave him. So I think it's really important that I often talk about all the difficulties I've had. My investor backed out the night before, telling me he wanted greater control. He didn't realize. He thought I was a pushover. At that time, I had given control of my company. He knew I was desperate for money. I was going to lose the lease. Luckily, my husband, I cried so much, he gave me all his money. But if he hadn't given the money, I would have lost the lease. So that was two really low points. That night, I hadn't sold a single thing. I spent the whole evening in the pub trying to sell korma and rice. No one wanted to eat it, and then also when the investor did this, I realized how easy it is when people perceive you to be powerless, perceive you to be weak. I realized one thing: I will never be weak again. I will never be powerless. I will work really hard. I will become powerful, and I will help all those who are powerless, because I will become the rock on which they can stand and become something. Because I've been through this, and it taught me something that, when you get out of it, that sense of victory is so amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question I have is, which type of food you like apart from Indian food? What different food?
I like Indian Chinese, not Chinese over here. Chinese over here is not like India. I love all the red sauce one. I love gobi Manchurian. In Calcutta, you get this chop suey, what they call American chop suey.
American.
And I love Calcutta Chinese. Calcutta Chinese food is better than all the other Chinese food. I'm not that biased, but I'm just saying. But Calcutta Chinese food is very good. So I think my favorite cuisine is Chinese, 100%. Otherwise, I love pizzas.
Okay. All right. So the last question I have is, what is your advice for the new generation, for the new girls who are coming for this business? What would you advise for a new generation?
My only advice to you is, if you do business, do it for the right reasons. Do not do business because you think it's going to make you famous, get you on television, it's going to get you a good husband, it will make your parents proud. All the wrong reasons. Business is extremely difficult. Don't walk into it thinking it's very easy. Walk into thinking this is going to be a nightmare, because you need to be prepared for all the failures that will happen along the way. And very important to have a business that is meaningful. Do not go into a business only looking at the bottom line, which is money. Because after a while, you might make money, but you will not satisfy your soul. It's very, very important to have a business which means something to you, and for you to be able to give something back to others. And you might think, oh, that she's just, this is all about politics, and but believe me, when the hard nights come, this will keep you through it. When you know that you are doing something positive for others and you're doing this for yourself. Otherwise, you will be defeated. You will walk off and you will leave something that could potentially. That night when the guy said no curry love, I could have stopped. Look at me today. I'm in the Michelin Guide. I'm considered a big person in the hospitality here. I didn't stop that night because for me, it was passion. So this is really important.
Thank you very much, Asma. I think this discussion can go on, but I will now formally hand it over to Mr. Kalyan Bose, Chair
I
BBGDAC.
just had a question. Saloni. I'll pass it on to Kalyan after I ask the question. So, Asma, I wanted to find out from your, what in your nature you think made you go on? What is that one thing about your nature which is there in your DNA which made you go on despite all?
I think being a second daughter. And not and feeling that others, not my own parents, my siblings, I was much loved, but feeling othered and dismissed and not seen as someone who was credible, and kind of like a burden and, unwanted by others. But my mother made me feel I was the world's best.
Operations are in London. Do you think that's made a difference? Could you have replicated this elsewhere in the UK? And
Yeah.
go on.
I mean, let me just answer that. I thought you were going to get anywhere else. I mean, as in India, no. I think that our country, India, has increasingly become very, very narrow-minded when it comes to how women operate in society. I think it's really sad. I grew up in the 80s in Calcutta, where I think I had far more rights and liberty. My education was brilliant in Calcutta University. I did history there. I think that I could not have opened this in any other city, because how is it that you do not find a restaurant like Darjeeling Express in India? Where are the all-female owned housewives running? I'm a Muslim with an all-Hindu team of every kind of background. Some of them are vegetarians, some of them are strict vegans. We all work together. Food has not divided us. We eat on the same table. We do not hate each other for what we eat. I think I could not have imagined opening this. This is not a criticism of what India is today, but in some ways it is about what we can be. We can be a much more tolerant, much more embracing society. I could not have opened this restaurant in India and survived. I would have had people picketing me outside for some reason or the other. And I think that this is what is very, very difficult, because London is a city which has its problems. It's not perfect, but it allowed someone like me to have roots in this country. And in the end, I tell everybody, I belong to London. London belongs to me. I walk in the city, and with a sense that there are bits of it, apart from the fact that bits of it look just like Calcutta at night, especially the city of London, looks just like BBD Bath, built by the same guys. We've got churches that look the same, St. Paul's Cathedral, you have stuff over here as well. But it is really about that, the fact that, even if it is not genuine, even if it's just on the surface, there is a semblance of diversity, there's a semblance of equality. People will allow you to be different and will not criticize or bring you down because you don't fit in with their idea of what is proper food, proper clothes, the right way to do business. I think it is I'm seeing what's happening in India now, with the kind of recent suicide of a Bollywood star. Everybody, it's very frightening, actually. I can't see how an all-female outfit could have survived in India in this era of, trial by media, of social media lynching, physical lynching of people as well. So I think it's very important, and I think that people who speak up are often crushed and discredited. And I have called Boris Johnson Eton mess. I got a message from his office saying, "Oh my God, please take it off." I said, "No, I will not." And Eton mess is this big, messy meringue and cream dessert. But Boris Johnson also went to Eton. But you can get away with a lot. I think there's nothing you can criticize people. And I think this is what allowed us, a business like ours. We don't criticize people, but people know that you've got to let us go. You've got to let us grow. And this is why I can't see this restaurant being in any other place apart from London. I know that there are many tolerant cities in the UK, and it's maybe my loss that I'm not there, but I haven't lived there. But I have lived in London, and I know London, and I feel a sense of connection with the city.
Do you think that you could have done what you have done if you hadn't had your family background, both your parents and also the support given to you by your family to enable you to grow?
Yes, I think that it is very important, and I say this is a very complicated issue with it's strange because as you will know from having lived here, that it is many of the South Asian families who live in England, their moral and social values are in the 1970s. They're in a time war. And often their attitude towards the mother and what she should be doing belongs to an age that we have all passed in India and Pakistan, Bangladesh. We do not have that anymore, those views. But many have stayed in that time warp. And this is the problem that, there are, in London, there are pockets of London which is very, very backward when it comes to how women are seen in South Asian families. And I think that, you do find, in areas in the north like Manchester, Birmingham, where, there's a great, vibrant restaurant scene, but again, all male dominated. It is really, there is lots of difference in the country, but I think that London is unique in the fact that it has allowed people to grow. It has a more varied, landscape when it comes to restaurants, when it comes to businesses, and I'm very grateful. A lot of people criticize, I'm sure I mean, the curry houses and how they're ridiculed now. The curry houses that do the chicken tikka masalas and the chicken baltis, came up with all these kind of crazy, I don't know, crazy dishes for the goras, as they would call it. They would feed them to the English, and the English loved it. And it is actually very significant because they actually transformed the palate of a nation. And then you see this the most in London of food. So one person gets a Michelin star, they all copy that same thing. So chocolate samosas, and kind of standard fare that people will do to think this is what people, so they make the food look French. And I just think that, there's not a problem with that, but we are losing our roots. We are losing the regionality of Indian food. That there are regions in if you pass 3 villages in any place in India, north, south, east, they baghar their dal differently. There's a different way of making dal. And India is divided between rice eating and wheat growing areas. And this again is a significant story that is not communicated. If you eat rice, you eat totally different things. If you eat roti, you have different things. My Abba was from Aligarh. My mother's from Calcutta. We had a table so big because Abba would not be able to eat rice. And if he saw fish, he would pass out. And if the fish had eyes, he'd be dead. So it was really the whole idea that, this is India. And I think that, this is our opportunity. So if you are interested in food, be very secure in what you want to do. Do not try and be like someone else. I didn't try to be like anyone else. When I wanted to open a restaurant in the heart of Soho, there was not a single restaurateur that looked like me, that sounded like me, that was like me. I wasn't afraid. I thought, great, I will become someone very famous, and everybody else will then be able to get a lease from a landlord saying, I'm going to be like Asma, I'll even be better than Asma. So I was excited by that I was going to be the first. And here with the supper clubs, I opened the biryani. I talk about food, and I talk about undivided India, the food of 1930s. I'm Muslim, and we have a completely different cuisine that changed, with partition completely. I talk about partition and food, things that people never talk about. People are still obsessed about, trains with dead bodies. Does no one know what happened to the food of Western UP, of those who left and those who stayed? I talk about that. I think that, you really need to be unafraid of actually communicating who you are, who your roots are. I'm extremely, fiercely proud of being Indian. And yet, people question my loyalty of people like me. And I tell people, the dust that flies from Jama Masjid, that flies and touches your lips, is the dust and roof of my ancestors. This idea that who's an outsider, who's an insider, is very complicated. Like in this country, when Chef's Table was announced, I was absolutely prepared to be trolled. That the right-wing people would come and say, oh, she's not very British. What's so British about her? Not a single message on Twitter. And you know how toxic Twitter can be. Not one person questioned my right to be the first British person on Netflix. And what does that say? Not about them, because they're picking up other people. It says about me, that I would have taken them through the cleaners and cleaned the floor with them for questioning who I am. I think it's really important not to let bullies bully you, not to let other people tell you that you're this and you're that and you don't belong here. I belong everywhere I want to be. There is no box in which you can put me. There's no box big enough that will fit me, that will fit someone like me. Not to do with my, it's not about my size only. It's about the fact that I can be everything I want to be. You ask me today, what are you today? I will tell you. Tomorrow I'll be someone else. That is my right. And it really is. Please take this lesson, all of you who are uncertain that, oh, no one from my background or no one in my mother's kitty party has done that. Forget it. And the fact that someone like me was picked in a kind of a huge, I mean, Chef's Table is one of the most watched, most prominent, you know, food programs in the world. And not only was it, it was nominated for an Emmy, my episode. Out of all the Chef's Table, my episode was. And why is that? I told the story from India. I talked about the roots of, of my food. People understand that. Do not be afraid to talk because people will respect you. They may throw stones, and someone might throw stones at me later. It doesn't matter. No one did when that announcement was made. Can you imagine? If, no one asked me, are you British? Are you Indian? What are you? They didn't dare ask me that because I had already set the stage that do not ask me who I am. I will tell you who I am. And this is really important. And, at that time, I wanted to continue saying this, but I had stopped because I was getting the feeling, I could see all the buffering happening, that there was a problem with the network. And this is, again, you think that technology is great in the West. In Soho, the internet is rubbish. Rubbish, absolutely. Because, English people are very strange. They won't let you dig the cobblestones. So the fact that no restaurant, half the evening, we're all standing out with our machines trying to get payments through because there's no network. They don't care. You can't dig our cobbled streets. Anyway, love them and live. What can you do? The English people are just unique on this one. So yeah, so we have very bad network. So it wasn't from your side, but from my side. So the connection was playing up, but that's how it is.
Thank you,
Asma, I think the one question has come in now, and I'll just read it out. What is that quality in a woman that stimulates the fire to work for your own self? In general, women are selfless and do everything for others.
Yes, absolutely true. And especially in our culture, we will set fire to ourselves to warm other people selflessly. And this is a huge problem that, and we seem to kind of, it's through osmosis, it goes through to our daughters. And we expect our daughter-in-law, who grew up in a different household, different completely, to come in and absorb and become part of this household and cook just like her mother-in-law. And it is really, we are a crazy society. We have this expectation from women. And the sad thing is, the women have delivered. Generations to generations of women have delivered, have allowed people to dictate to them who they are. And I think that, it is complicated for some families, for the girl to go out to work in an office, who are you working with, commuting, which is also a big problem, especially if you're in Bombay trying to get from one place to another, you can't use the railways, trains. Are you going to be in this cramped space? You can't use buses. So we have these limitations. And I think this is why it's so important that women think of becoming entrepreneurs. Because within your own space, and now with technology, go out, learn the technology, use technology to reach out to other people. You can sell so much stuff online. The whole world has changed. And the pandemic is your opportunity. It's your creative pause. All that noise around you, all your aunties who you don't have to sit next to now anymore, are all sitting in their own houses, isolating. Now all those people, the chatter of people around you, they're gone. Use this time to think, where is my inner voice? What is it that I want to do to my life? Like I look back at my final moment in my life, what will I have been proud of that I had achieved? This must be your achievement. Not that I cooked, biryani for my mother-in-law. Zero for that. You get nothing for having cooked perfect food, okay? I'm saying this as a chef. I mean, I'm lost. It's your business, then please do it. Cook because it's your business. Do not do anything that gives you no joy. You have to be rebellious. Look at the way I'm wearing a shalwar kameez. Can you see? I'm wearing kurta. I don't wear skirts. I don't wear dresses. I don't drink alcohol. I'm staying within my own tradition. People are very surprised. I have halal meat. I don't have pork. And I go into huge, big industry parties where there's one person carrying one glass of orange juice waiting for me to arrive in all those glasses of champagne. I'm not embarrassed. This is what it is. You know, do not, if you can't eat this and you can't, do not get worried by what you can or can't do. You know, my society, you will always find a route, like water. Get to the ocean. Find your way around the stones. Find your way along the dried earth. Get to the ocean, and that is your real freedom. Because remember that one thing, that water will always find its way. So when things get hard, imagine that I'm flowing like the water. I will go through everything, and eventually I will reach there. And there are nights when it was so tough for me, and I always imagined myself always victorious, always free.
Thank you very much, Asma, for a very interesting, thoughtful, thought-provoking conversation. I'd say the lessons that you've given are applicable to everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of background, regardless of race, regardless of vocation. They're not, it's right for everyone. And I think we should take those lessons to heart. Be true to yourself, be passionate about what you do, and don't allow other people to tell you what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. I think very valuable lessons, and you are a living example of the success that approach can bring. Thank you very much for your time with us, and we hope to have more such sessions with you and to hear more about your business and your life in the years ahead. I'd like to thank Shella and Saloni, the CBI and the BBG staff, in helping in putting this webinar together. And I've had a good time, and I hope everyone else has. Thank you once again.